It was my childhood. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with a bunch of nerds. We got three staff writers and a Ted. So staff writer Doug, staff writer Megan, nerd archist Ted's, and chief and editor Ty, the big guy himself. And we've got Professor Bill in the house, also a staff writer.
So four staff writers, two nerds.
Yeah, and a what did I say? Three? I can't count. And also, he's got a Professor Bill also has a kick-ass YouTube channel if you're into comic books and such.
Indeed.
Which you can get your hourly dose over there. So I basically put out this poll for the patrons to decide what kind of game we're going to play, and pretty early on it was pretty decisive, and it's like neck and neck between four different categories. So I'm going to actually just do a screen share of the poll itself, if I can find it over here somewhere. And we can take a look at it. And did I? No. Okay, good. I did not stupidly close it out. I also have the chat up, guys. So if you guys have ideas, you want to throw them out there. I cannot promise you we will use them, but we will look at them. And if you come up with something more awesome, then I'm very open to checking that out. All right, so here's the actual poll. We had 74 people vote from the Patreon out of 139, and that's another thing too, guys. We're going to try and do more and more cool stuff over on the Patreon with people. We're going to have all kinds of different polls over there, and we're going to get a lot more social over there than we've been in the past. We've been kind of like Patreon hermits. So steampunk is the clear winner with 13, with fantasy and horror neck and neck. And then, after that, it's espionage and spy. Everything else is pretty far behind. So instead of just picking one and sticking with it, I'm like, you know what? I think we're just going to put these four in a blender and see what happens. I've got some ideas. I'll throw them out there, and then I want to have you guys weigh in and tell me what you think. And there will definitely be opportunities for you to weigh in on the world and the game itself.
Because ultimately, if you're not into the game, then you're not going to want to be a player. And we got a lot of players here lined up. So
yeah, we're gonna try and make it a game for everybody. So the premise I'm running off of is that the original world was like any other fantasy world: elves and dwarves and gnomes and humans, magic and all of that. And something happened, and the magic kind of changed or went away, and it no longer functioned the way it did, which led to technology kind of taking over. But instead of being the technology we know of, or even steam-powered technology from a typical steampunk, what happened is when the magic changed, almost think of it as the weave from Forgotten Realms, but instead of magic, it is now this substance that they refer to as Aether. And the problem with it is it's very volatile and it's hard to use. And those that would attempt to use it and control it as a mage would use magic, ultimately end up going mad. It ends up consuming them and destroying them. But the more industrial races, gnomes, and dwarves, and humans to an extent, as well as this is another point for you guys to pick on, whether it's going to be kobolds or goblins, take up the craft of either smithing or either feicing, right? I'm not sure on the term yet. Again, that's another point I'll let you guys pick on which one you like the sound of more, or if you feel like they could both be something that gets incorporated. Definitely open to suggestions there. But so what happens is magic is replaced by this technology that is kind of driven by a magic-esque force. The main difference between what would be considered magic now and then is we're changing it to Aether, and it's a very hostile substance to work with. It's like the magic version of nuclear energy, in my opinion. So that was the first kind of like cataclysmic event that happens in this world. Um, then there's a second that drives all divine magic from the world and divine um, beings from the world or influence. The gods are gone. There hasn't been gods in ages. That and well, actually that I think that and the magic thing happens simultaneously. But then the second thing that happens is the technology advances so far that the races no longer live on the surface. They live in 13 floating cities. No one really remembers why or how that happened, but no one ever goes to the surface anymore. You know, the vista when looking out outside of the cities is nothing but clouds. They sit above the clouds, and there's 13 of them. 12 of them have are kind of spaced evenly throughout the world, with the 13th one lying in the center. Well, 10 years ago, and this is like the third cataclysmic event. 10 years ago, a war broke out, and that center city was destroyed. Well, it has just. It was more than 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the thing happens. 10 years, what happens is that city that was destroyed reappears. It has come back, and it is back where it was, except for that for miles and miles around that city is what's called the curtain. It's just this area of gloom. It's not darkness. You can see all the cloud cover is there the way it was, but they're dark, stormy clouds with like purple and green lightning that can be seen dancing and racing amongst it. And you know, no one has successfully returned from that city unscathed. Aether does not work the same way within the curtain, and basically it's considered a cursed place. One of the problems too is this is totally screwed up trade, because now you know no one will go through the curtain unless they absolutely need to at this point. All of the cities are fairly competitive with each other over resources, you know, especially with having less because they do not go through the surface anymore. You guys are going to have to help me with why they don't go to the surface.
I have ideas on that one.
Excellent. I am going to be borrowing heavily from Ebron and the Aeronauts Windlass on this one. And so I also have an idea for a couple, I want to say archetypes, not classes. Open Legend does not have classes; it's a classless system, but archetypes. And so there is going to be an Aetheromancer. The problem with being an Aetheromancer is you're going to have to deal with insanity. That will be a score that will actually fuel your abilities, but using it is very dangerous. There is going to be Aetherficers or Aethersmiths. Now that is the safest way to use the Aether. Now, I'm not going to say it's completely without its own challenges, because things blow up sometimes. It's, you know, just the nature of working with a dangerous substance. There is going to be 2 classes, or possibly 3 classes, that draw from this new region. They're able to tap into an unknown source of power there. One of them kind of works similar to a warlock from D&D. But if you overuse that power, you cross over from being like a warlock to being a direct conduit from this otherworldly power. And then the third one is going to be very much like an Aetherficer. Again, like the safest way to use this substance, but not without its own risks. And you know, these guys are going to have, you know, a little more to deal with than the Aetherficers. All 3 of them, there's another score that I'm going to introduce into the game called Corruption, and that is going to be that's going to power them. Where the insanity score is going to affect your mind, the corruption score is going to affect basically your body and your spirit. So these are some things I'm kind of playing with, and then I have to work out some kinks for. And then the other archetype is going to be a psychic. And the psychics kind of like started coming about 10 years ago when the city resurfaced. And it's been kind of like a gradual, slow build up. Now, I don't actually want like the mages and the psychics and the Aethersmiths to go to a power level like a superhero game. You know, I want to keep it a little bit pulled back from that. and we're going to start whatever. We're going to start at level 1, and we'll slowly build up from there. I'm thinking, as far as, when you guys start the game, you guys could be bounty hunters, you could be pirates, you could be smugglers, you could be part of the military. I definitely feel like all the cities are going to have this like Cold War feel towards each other, where they're not enemies, but they're not friends either, because they're very competitive. There's a couple things that I would like you guys to help me work on, and one is I want there to be a popular sport that's played in every city, and it is what like one of the ambassadors between the cities is they will actually compete and play this sport against each other, and that's their Switzerland. And then like if you guys have ideas for like art and music and that kind of stuff, that would be really cool.
All right, so you touched on fantasy, you touched on steampunk, you touched on spy, with them being, kind of in a Cold War-esque situation. But you had mentioned to me about your horror angle on that one. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah. So the horror angle is the resurfacing of this city. So essentially, the cities actually formed a seal upon the world, blocking off this otherworldly power, Great Old Ones, Cthulhu, whatever you want to call it. Well, those seals are now breaking down because the knuckleheads inadvertently destroyed it when they took out that city. And also too, like because the world's got fantasy roots, like a dragon could possibly pop up later in the game somewheres, or any of the tropes. That might even be the reason why they moved away from the ground. Maybe there's too many monsters on it now. The ogres took over or whatever. So
all right, so let me get into my thoughts. And again, everything's still up for debate for all of us. What do we have? We have 6 of us that can weigh in. So my decision, or my vote, for whether it be goblins or kobolds that kind of step up more into the industrial mainframe, my vote is for goblin. But either way, I'm completely kosher with that. I think that the the gloom and the clouds that are surrounding the inner city, whether the common people know it or not, there's actually a layer of that below the flying cities, but it's like they're so far above that the regular cloud cover covers that, so very few people actually go and deal with that. There is a rare sect of people that have to keep things quiet, but they are kind of a premier job for those that are crazy and insane, that actually go down to the main surface, whereas Dave was putting out the idea of it's totally full of monsters that have been warped and twisted by the gloom and the lightning that is so far different from normal. But you have to get resources somehow. There's only so much that can be in these flying cities. So it's these guys and gals that actually go through this dangerous jobs, and they're paid well if they actually return, and they're paid even more for their silence, because they don't want the fear to spread to the main populace about this is what has to be done just to get resources. I would say water would be common, because you could literally get that from rain clouds, but actual building materials and that kind of stuff isn't so much. So even hauling stone and timber and that kind of stuff is going to be a life-threatening mission.
I like that, Ted. That works out really well. I like the idea that it's a kind of a secret organization. All the cities would probably have their own, and they would probably compete with each other in order to get the resources.
I would say, again, this is, how much detail do you want to go into? There's probably some times that they've fought each other, and there's times that they've worked together to save everyone's life. And it's like, all right, well, we each take half. This way we get to live as opposed to, everyone dying. So it's literally a, cutthroat as need be.
So let's go down the line, and I'll just call out the person as I see them on the here. So we got one vote for goblins. Goblin or kobold, Doug?
Goblin.
Megan?
Goblin.
Ty?
Kobold.
And Bill?
Yeah, sorry, I'm with Kobold.
Huh, interesting. So we've got 3 and 2, and I have to be the tiebreaker. I'm going to actually throw it to the chat. So I think I lead towards kobold as well, because I feel like goblins have been done more. But I think this is a fun place to go with the chat.
Doug says goblins.
yeah. The interbreeding is why they actually had to leave the surface. Oh, so all right. The votes are coming in. Nate's in the chat. Nate, can you tally up kobold and goblins for me? And just throw it in the chat what you think. I'm seeing a lot of kobold, though.
Yeah, ain't no tally, man. That's a Kobold.
I said, to me, that part doesn't matter. Whatever race winds up going in there, that's what I'm going to play. I've got a idea of what I want to do or what I'd like my character to be, and he kind of has to be that little twerp of a character to really work.
This is great though. Scott Minyard, Gobby's rule, kobold's drool.
I'm curious, what is travel like between the cities? Like, is it common? Do people use airships or teleportation or what?
Okay. Oh, so let me get into that. So I definitely want to do airships. We're playing steampunk. There's got to be airships, but I didn't want to do ciphers because that's been done. There's a lot of things that have been done, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So what actually holds the cities up? I'll start there. Are these things that were crafted, and they're called Aether struts. And what they do is they pull the Aether into them, and they almost act like anchors, holding these cities in place, and they slowly spin. Not helicopter spin, but slowly spin. And as they spin, they actually gather up more and more of the Aether. And that's great, Bill. More and more in the Aether, which actually is converted to electricity, and that powers the cities. But it's the Aether, these Aether struts is what holds up the cities. Now that same technology has been used on the airships. So they almost look like skis on a sled on the ship. So, typically a ship will have 2 to 4 struts. The more struts it has, the actual more powerful of a vessel it is. Or if it's a bigger ship, it requires bigger struts or more struts in order to keep it aloft. So it's very rare to see one with 4 or more, unless they're like battle cruiser style airships. And even then it would be massive.
So it's not like the sky is just filled with these things, though. I mean, it's, like people don't have their own personal things to go between cities, probably, right?
No, only the wealthy would. There might be some smaller vessels that are single strutted, and but they're also probably a lot more dangerous to use as well.
Motorcycles.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, I was thinking like a rowboat, but a motorcycle will work as well.
Okay, I was thinking like a Kira.
But that's something that could actually be put on board, put in there.
Do we have a final tally from Nate yet, or was it a landslide towards kobold?
Looks like 13-ish to 7-ish kobolds and the goblins.
All right, so kobolds win.
Nice. Kobolds will be eating their babies. And I was even thinking too, so because I want to tap in the Open Legends special attributes, and have you guys be able to use them. Like some of the ways you might be able to use them is special gear that is not readily available. Where Open Legends is a little weird in the sense it has both gear, like more like a D&D game, but it also has these attributes that really make me think of a Mutants and Masterminds or Champions style game where you would just add a descriptor. So I'm actually going to add that into the game. So when you have when you're using one of the special attributes, you have to add a descriptor to it. And like it might be bio or psychic or corrupt or Aether. But that is just going to tell me and you where you draw that power from. So if you go to use that power in a way that doesn't make sense to that descriptor, you just know. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's definitely one of the things. And so what do you guys think about the, do you think we should make an artificer archetype and and a smith archetype, or just use one or the other? And if so, which do you prefer? Again, I'll just start with Doug and then work my way around left to right the way I see you guys.
I guess I'm not sure what the distinction would be. Could you elaborate maybe a little bit? Like I'm not sure what the difference would be.
There wouldn't one. There really isn't one. And me and Ted were talking back and forth about it, and I thought he saw them as a little bit different.
So the way I saw it, Dave used the term Aether Smith and Aether Ficer, and both of them kind of involve around, essentially this Aether force and a little bit of technology. Now, I'm looking this as very steampunky and whatever have you, and I will voice some more things about what I'd like to do with that angle in a moment. But I saw Aether Smiths as someone that would be more like a Eldritch Knight who are using magic to aid their combat abilities, and an Aether Ficer would be more like an artificer, somebody who used magic and technology together, but one is clearly a melee combatant, one is someone not a melee combatant. That was how I saw them. Now Dave viewed them as the same thing, and it's someone who mangles technology and magic together. So we can do however everyone sees fit, but that was just my 2 cents.
Okay, well, in that case, the Aether Smith seems more like it would be just like an Ethermancer that chooses powers that aid them in melee, so maybe they'd be more susceptible to that insanity. And then the Aether Ficer would probably be not interacting directly with the Aether, so maybe that would be like a separate thing. But I don't know, the Aether Smith just sounds like it'd be an Ethermancer that just chose powers that were melee related.
So Ethermancers actually, they use, conduct, and wield the power of Aether. Very, very, very dangerous to them and possibly to the people around them. Yeah, the Ficer or the Smith is someone that incorporates it into technology, and that is how I saw it. And I was just like, I wasn't sure which suffix I wanted to use.
Oh, I like Aether Smith. Just sounds easier on the tongue, and personally, as just a gamer, it's like I am just a simpleton, I suppose. So it just seems like they'd just be 2 different approaches to the same set of skills. So I would probably just stick with one archetype. But okay. I like Aether Smith. Sounds cool.
Well, I respect everyone's opinions that I have on here, and that's why I wanted to throw things to you guys and do it as a group. You're up, Megan.
I like the idea that, like Doug said, it would be a 2 sides of the same coin sort of thing, but people that are practitioners really get into this is what I am, don't call me the other thing or I'm gonna be mad. They get really specific about it, but other people use them interchangeably, they don't know.
Okay. And Ted, you kind of gave us your feel for it. What do you think, Ty?
If it really sounds like it's just a matter of semantics more than anything, what people want to be called. And I almost think that if that's the case, it would be cultural differences. It would depend on where you were and who you are. I mean, since we're talking kobolds, they're probably just going to call it a smith, or if we went with goblins, they'd probably just call it a smith. Elves, on the other hand, might go the opposite direction. But if we're talking actual mechanics in the game, as far as one's more wizard-like and the other's a little more eldritch. mechanics. If that makes sense.
It didn't make sense, but not because of what you said. You're cutting in and out a little. For me, anyway. Everyone else get the same.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you bounce in and out. I only got every third or fifth word.
Yeah, you can try cutting down your bandwidth, maybe.
Blame Ty's Aethernet.
Okay. I will cut down my bandwidth. I'll set it on low. Trying to. Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So far, so good.
What I was trying to say is it sounded, if we're talking just semantics as far as what they would like to be called, or if we're actually talking game mechanics. If we're talking game mechanics, like whether we're going more wizard approach or more Eldritch Knight approach, I like both. I don't see why there couldn't be both in the game, and whatever they're called is kind of a moot point to a certain extent. If we're just talking semantics about what like wants to be called, I think that would be more of a cultural thing. It would depend on what part of society you're in, maybe what race. And goblins would probably call it a smith. Elves, because they're more fancy, would probably go with Thermancer or Etherficer or something like that. Did you hear me now?
Yes. I got most of that. And what are your thoughts, Bill?
What were we talking about again? I'm joking. All right. In all honesty, when you first said it, I thought of the Aether Artificer, like the Dungeons and Dragons online video game, which is based on version 3, where you're literally like taking off your arm and replacing it with something else. So like you're not doing saving throws because it's all done to yourself. You know, you're basically making yourself into like a Borg, you know, fantasy world Borg. But I thought of the smith as somebody who's actually making bombs, weapons, maybe even dealing with like putting a soul of some sort inside of an automaton and things like that. So that's where I'm at.
So we've got many different views here, Dave. How do you want to take that one?
Well, I don't know, because there's a lot of good stuff there. It's just a matter of how we want to put them together. Is what it's going to come down to.
Well, just from reading through the rules a bit, it's pretty wide open. I mean, you know, it's not really like class based, so it's like you could have all of those things. I mean, it's just people's different approach to how they use, you know, the ether and which banes and perks and boons and all that kind of feats they choose. So, I mean, maybe there could be like organizations, you know, like the Smiths Guild, and they all use like a certain archetype, but it's like, you know, you really don't pick a class per se in the system from what I saw. So it could just, I mean, there could be as many different practitioners as there are, you know, archetypes. I mean, everybody could do it differently.
All right, so this is where I'm going. Aetherficers are basically take Aether and they build tech from it that anyone could pretty much use. They use it the best. And if you're actually someone who's using that kind of technology, you would actually you either need to know how to do it yourself, or you will need a special somebody that will build it for you, and it would be insanely expensive. And there's a good possibility you'll have to re-up on your Ether tech dealer, because they are prone to blow themselves up at times. The Ether Smiths are modders. I love that idea. It's something different. I like the idea that they're actually basically changing out biological parts. And, you know, maybe we can look at something like Shadowrun for examples of, well, if you have too much, and it could be something that actually gets done to you as well. So a term might be, you know, he's been smithed, or he's been Aether smithed. And it could possibly be something incorporated into other characters as well. And then we can decide how society feels about it as a whole, because I definitely think it's kind of weird when you start, you know, replacing your body parts.
I dig it.
I had an idea for the sport. You mentioned the sports earlier. I'm just thinking like, well, it's like Cold War and kind of a global thing, and soccer's the most popular game in the world. So maybe it's sort of like a ether soccer, where it's like an anti-gravity soccer, maybe played like in a sphere of ether, and there could be like different effects that the ether triggers during the game. Like it's like dangerous in a sense. It's like,
so that works, and so Aether is everywhere. It's never a matter of having it someplace. Quidditch, just play Quidditch. But when you say that, I'm kind of thinking like maybe they wear these like paddle shoes, so that they're basically standing on these struts, and it allows them to. And as staff writer Scott Garber had mentioned something about Aether and heavy Aether. So heavy Aether areas could totally be a thing. And maybe the game is typically played in pockets of heavy Aether, which makes it easier to pull it off.
All right, so how about this? We'll call the thing Aether Ball, and you have this sphere that they play in, and however many people are on a team, but they literally have the goal hoops are literally a hole in the Aether, and whatever gear is required, but they literally, through running and maneuvering, they move themselves and the sphere, and they have to get the ball through the enemy's hoop. So like you can be trying to maneuver yourself and the ball at the same time, or you could just be kind of flying through the Aether while your team is maneuvering the hoop closer to you, while the other team is trying to maneuver it away from you. So like it requires like tactics that require 3 dimensions and a whole different train of thought, as well as being far more physical.
and there could be like ether effects during the game too. Like if conditions are met, maybe it's like a big blast of force like pushes you, or just who knows, all kinds of crazy things. So maybe the gravity reverses or gets really heavy or something. I don't know.
Taking inspiration from as Bill pointed out, Quidditch has multiple layers going on. You have the scoring ball, you have the bludgers, and you have the snitch. So if you have members of your team that are required, your job is to do these certain tasks, it adds that many more layers to the game, as opposed to, all right, we all just try to get the ball forward in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
How against the rules would it be to have one member of the team just zipping around trying to be as disruptive as possible?
I think that would be hysterical.
I think most sports kind of have that in it, whether it's supposed to or not. So that would absolutely work. And what I'm thinking is, so there could be this concept of high or low light and heavy Aether spots, right? And the effect is they either slow or speed up whatever moves through them, as long as they're using the right materials, which is whatever these other struts are made of. So, and I'm really stealing from Mario Kart on this one. So, like, you hit a pool of heavy Aether and it just slingshots you through, or it would slingshot the ball through, whatever. So that could be, and in game mechanics for this game, advantage and disadvantage work really nicely. Or some of the boons or banes. And the light Aether could be areas where your gear doesn't work as good, the ball doesn't work as good, so it slows you down when you go through those. And
maybe
go ahead.
Maybe the ball itself is like made of Aether, and it changes properties during the game too. I don't know, just a thought.
Oh, it could become lighter or heavier,
or even become like flame. Grow spikes, burst into flame or something.
So there could literally be sigils on the, in the sphere that, an opponent or anyone could go up and change the sigil, and when that happens, that changes the ball.
That's cool.
Like I would want as much as possible to be incorporated within that sphere itself, which would be like mostly translucent, so that like the players, they have goggles so that they see it as a solid object, but the spectators actually can watch it almost like they're just looking through glass, and they see just fine.
If we're going to do that, can I just be really silly? Well, kind of. And say,
Yes.
look, let's say on both sides, both teams, they've got the team captain, so to speak. And the team captain is a major Aether mancer, whatever you want to call it. And they're always trying to turn the Aether ball to their will. All right. And they can try and, mentally attack the other captain, or try and influence the ball, or protect themselves, whatever they're going to do. But whatever they're going to do their round, that affects the game. And this way they could, make multiple balls. They can make the spiky ball, like Megan was saying, a fireball, whatever they want to do. And this way the team captains have a lot of say.
So that should be done through a piece of equipment and through a Ficer or a Smith, only because one of the things that I guess I'm not conveying is like Aethermancers are going to be extremely rare because it's very dangerous to use. Matter of fact, the elves are actually on a decline in this world because too many of them tried to use it as if it were magic, and they still, having been cut off from magic and being such a magical race, it really has devastated their population. The other thing, like I'm thinking I want to do away with halflings. Humans and elves have lost the ability to interbreed, so there are no half elves. So I really want to also have some key set things that differentiate this from other steampunk games, other fantasy games.
So I think Megan's got to say something. She was bobbing up and down in excitement, I think.
Oh, no, I'm just like really into the idea of crazy Aether mages.
So I definitely want it in there, but I want it to be, there's definitely going to be a risk reward. It's going to be a tiered system of, because you're an Aethermancer, you can do more than people at your level can do. But, do you want to risk your character for it? Because at a certain point, anyone who plays someone that uses a lot of insanity or a lot of corruption, your character may have to be turned in.
Worth it.
Well, is that so? But I definitely want that to be in there. So anyone who uses those things could. And here's the thing: we're playing a game with exploding dice. So if you're phenomenally successful with using insanity or corruption, I feel like that could have some really bad effects on the character. But you'd get to do something spectacular.
So
yeah, the way you describe it makes me think of like kind of that Victorian era approach to magic, where it's like, probably like high society people probably think it's like, ooh, it's cool to go to the occultist and have a seance and stuff, and not it's not common, but it's like it's dangerous.
Yes.
And like,
so just out of curiosity, are you guys like, is everyone on board with this world? Do you see a character idea shaping in your heads?
yeah, several. I think this world sounds awesome.
I've got nods from everyone but Ty. How are you feeling?
Oh yeah, I've got multiple character ideas.
All right. So I'm going to throw out my idea, and you guys can do as you want with it. I don't know how this world is kind of viewing slavery or indentured servitude or whatever have you, but as I said in the beginning, I want my character started off being forced to work or whatever have you, and I'm going with Kobold now because that's the race that we chose. And at some point in time, he did something and demonstrating to his superior that he's actually quite a skilled engineer, and he's been mistreated and whatever have you, but he's going to wind up becoming at some point in time, before the game starts, he's going to be the Aether Ficer, who's got the ability to wield this technological magic and whatever have you. But I just kind of like this small little grunt of a thing who is actually kind of intelligent and useful and has just been mistreated, and hopefully he gets out from whatever master to be able to go off and do grand things.
So the other thing is, like, I guess I want to get a consensus of what kind of party you guys want to have. Like, literally, you could be if you're like, hey, we want to actually be the sports team and play that. I'd be like, all right, and we could do adventures around that. If you guys are like, nah, we want to be spies, we want to be pirates, we want to be bounty hunters, we want to be these guys that go down to the surface, part of the secret grounder organization. We could do that. You could be military. You could be a criminal organization within one of the cities, or something that I'm not even thinking about.
All right, I'm definitely not voting towards bounty hunter. I kind of dig the idea of being the people that go towards the surface, or somehow this guy has been drafted toward the sports team. I could be okay with that as well. I don't see how, but I would try to make this work.
Oh, one of my ideas too was for the sports thing. We did have the idea of like the manipulator player, right? But I also I was thinking also a citer, and like you're talking about the goggles. Like maybe only one person on the team gets the goggles, right? And he's got to like direct the whole team.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
I mean, it could even be the same guy that manipulates, is the one trying to manipulate the ball. And also, like, I don't know if we have Dresden fans in here or not, but when I think of manipulating the ball, I think of death masks. And when he's in the Harry Dresden is in the combat in the end, the challenge at the end, and basically there's a stuff. It's basically like, for those who aren't familiar with it, a sphere of annihilation that you can mentally command through your willpower. And, and the duel happens by two individuals trying to push it towards the other person with the force of will.
Mordite, right?
Yeah, the Mordite. Yeah. So go ahead.
So does that mean every single game somebody has to die for there to be a winner?
No, what I think Dave is saying is that there's somebody who is literally just sitting there, and his sole purpose on the team is mental effort.
Okay.
Is that what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yes, and know what that also means? That means there's someone that there has to be one or more individuals that will be dedicated to protecting him, while there's also an individual that's dedicated to disrupting him. And that could be like the crazy, the slasher of the team. In hockey, you have the slasher or the brawler, the guy that draws the penalties. And there's probably like specific rules on how they're allowed to do it, but there's probably a bunch of other ways that they do it.
I was thinking that would overcomplicate it. Like I was thinking the guys could, they have to try and manipulate the ball, protect themselves, try and hurt the other guy also, and just like, what do you want to do for your turn? So that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Like, get a stun off on the other guy for a turn. Yes, I control the ball the next round.
Okay, well, then you have to decide, okay, if that guy goes down, I'm not saying death necessarily, but if he's out of power, knocked out, or something like that, then what happens? Is it game over? Does a replacement come in? Does somebody else on the team have to try to fill his role?
The other team gets complete control of the ball.
So it's practically into the game, more or less into the game then. Not necessarily, but
unless that if your team's captain is knocked out, you would have to then knock their captain out, and it becomes a focus play of, can you knock the captain out before they achieve this goal? And then it becomes more of a stalemate type of situation.
Or a situation where we have to knock out the rest of the other team and win by conquest.
So here's the idea too, is that you could still physically manipulate the ball. You'd fight for control with it physically versus their mental ability to do it, but you might have to deal with things like spikes and stuff like that, so you're at a disadvantage, but you would still be able to play. That's how I say it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
By conquest, put the fear of God in them.
but that would be another way of winning the game too, like taking out players and stuff like that. It's probably a really brutal sport.
Yes.
Well, we're spending an awful lot of time talking about this sport. If we're not going to be if none of us are going to be players in the sport,
so should we vote on that as to like, what is the campaign? Are we doing the game, or are we something else?
So someone also interested put an idea out there, and I kind of want to incorporate it into the game now, of trains that run between the cities. Like there would just be miles and miles of Aether struts as tracks that the trains would run on.
Okay, but only if you use my idea that they're Jetson tubes. Trains and Jetsons tubes. Come on.
I'm all for Bill's idea of having things in the city having the tubes, but I don't think tubes between the cities is a good idea.
Yeah,
I mean, they're like really far apart, right? If there's only these 3 agencies in the whole world.
Catapults. They're culverts, come on.
Oh, but what if you had like, okay, what if, as far as the public goes, there's no tubes between the cities, but what if there's actually kind of like a secret tube, like only government officials and things like that can use?
Under the cloud line?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. And they kind of, it's kind of like, the phone that connects the president. Well, I don't know if it's even still called the Kremlin now. It's basically a way for different powers to connect with each other every once in a while.
So, all right. So I've written down secret tube / train. So we can possibly do something with that. We'll delve back into that. So I guess let's go before we move on. Let's decide what kind of game you guys actually want to play in. Because like Ted said, and like Ty said, like we spent a lot of good time, talking about the game, and I think it's a fun idea. So it's definitely going to appear at some point, but spending more time on it isn't worthwhile unless you guys are going to actually be a team.
Well, what if a lot of political decision could be made based on the games? This is the way to keep, you try and keep all of your, kind of like the Hunger Games.
That I definitely like that idea. I also, it makes me think of maybe a lot of business deals and a lot of diplomacy is actually done at these events.
Yeah, the mafia, stuff. They'll be doing that stuff, but like betting on boxing and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be able, whether you guys are team members or not, we'll still be able to highlight this in the game, and it's a huge part of the daily lives of people because, it's like the Roman thing, entertain them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I have a suggestion.
Go, shoot.
Okay, so what if the thing that we're doing is kind of either frowned upon or illegal, and how we're gaining access to the cities that we're going to for our actual jobs is pretending to be one of these teams?
Oh, that was definitely going to happen at some point.
Yes. I'm so excited.
With stuff like this, what about if we were like a secret society? A lot of people are saying spy. I don't see a lot of spy games out there. What if we were? Megan looks like really giddy right now. What if we were all like, spies, and we had to influence the game? Yes, we had to once in a while play the game and things like that. Because the character that I was personally thinking of playing was a soldier who was found to be gifted psychically. Because you mentioned from the very beginning, Dave, that this was like Cold War-esque. And the CIA just released that was the case. I'm former military, and I know in the military, they used to do that all the time. Try and find psychics and things until they realize that no, it's probably not possible, unless that's what they're trying to make us believe.
Basically, something that might be related to that. I was thinking about what if there's like a minor league, and basically people are sent down to the surface world for whatever reason, and if you survive, hey, guess what? You just moved up to the majors.
Well, the surface world, I'm kind of putting that as like that's like going into Mordor kind of territory. I think no one really willingly would go there. They, that might actually be a punishment, is being exiled to the surface world.
Do people never come back from the surface world?
That's the rumor.
So that could be, I don't want to spoil any ideas you had, but it's like maybe that is just a lie they propagate. You shouldn't go down there, but it's actually maybe it's awesome down there. Maybe Aether's running out and they're like, we better build some cities down here and not tell anybody about it, because when this stuff runs out, these cities up in the clouds are...
Well, no, I want you guys to all come up with a theory why.
Oh, okay.
Why they don't go to the surface, right?
Oh.
And the idea is any of them or all of them could be true.
So it's a conspiracy.
Here there be
sort of thing.
dragons.
Well, as far as characters, that I'm kind of like with Bill, where the idea of like the Cold War spy thing really took my imagination, and I was thinking somewhat like a vaudeville type of entertainer, because I figured like, well, that's an easy way to be like a cover to go from city to city. It's just like I have a show there, so that was kind of the character I had in mind, something like that.
You guys are loosely being referred to as the Ether.
I like it.
I like it.
That down. So at some point, I do want to get away from using the word Ether for everything, but
Now is not
Branding.
that time.
It's branding.
yeah.
But even with Ted's character, I mean, that could be really, it's like a mechanical expert. That's a decent reason to, be traveling from city to city, is whether it's fixing stuff for a team, or you just had a job there, or whatever. I like the idea that we all have like a covered job, and then we have like a spy job.
And then as being a kobold grunt, I'm not going to be, at everyone's notice very easily. It's just another one of the, one of those.
Mm-hmm. One of the abilities in the game that is a perk called Idle, which really caught my eye. It's like once per session, if you get into hot water, you can just like kind of play off the fact like, I'm a famous entertainer. Why would you want to hurt me or whatever? And you can just kind of get past that. That's cool.
No, that definitely works. What about Megan and Ty? What do you guys have rattling around in your brain pans?
I want to play a crazy mage.
I know it.
I'm like, my idea is like the complete opposite. No magic, no ether. Mike, I was thinking, since we were talking about secret societies so much, I was thinking of like an ancient knighthood, almost like a Knights Templar thing, with the ultimate goal being we have to take back the world. We have to go down below and we have to take it back, and we're not going to use any of this fancy ether stuff because that's what's ruined the world. Now, obviously, as on an individual level, if you live in this society, you're going to have to some extent, use ether because it's probably going to be part of your day-to-day life to some extent, at least travel or something like that. So that would be allowed. But as far as like being an ether user, like a wielder or something like that, no, that would be very much frowned upon. And how hardcore these guys would be, or my particular character, how hardcore he would be, would kind of depend on the world and the situation and what's going on.
So
now,
I think before we have any trips down to the surface, we probably reenact whatever sigil or seal to stop the Cthulhu-esque being from coming and eating everyone.
Yeah, no, like the
first you have
secret
to know
society.
about it.
Well, yes, obviously, yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking if I go the Knights route, sort of the secret Knights group, it would not be like an immediate goal, like, okay, we have to go down to the world tomorrow and take over. This is more like a long range thing, like, okay, we may not be able to do it today, but maybe our children's children's children will be able to take back the world.
Ty,
So
what if that was like a religion? What if that was actually an order, a religion? You're like a paladin of that religion, or just a strong believer.
Well, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be secret. I mean, it could be a public organization. It could be like the big religion, and even within religion, there could be secret societies within that. It could be a big, huge thing, or it could be something very small that not too many people know about. But I like the religion idea.
Yeah, it could be a mainstream religion with a sect to it, or it could be the Scientology of this world. It could, depending. you could go to a lot of different ways. Like you could have philosophies like, maybe like your religion might believe the Aether drove out the gods and you want the gods to come back.
Exactly. Well, but then you run into the issue, okay, how big would this religion actually be? Because if it's kind of anti-Aether, but Aether is sort of what's keeping the cities up and keeping everyone alive, who's really going to want to join your religion? It wouldn't be like
that also goes back to the philosophy of what Doug was saying. It was like, actually the surface is fine and it's a conspiracy. They're keeping us from it.
Exactly, and therefore you make it more like a climate scientist and the naysayers.
That could be.
Yeah.
But the thing is, which one is the church? Are they the naysayers or the climate scientists?
There's both.
Maybe one's a public face, and then they have like a secret society. Where it's like, okay, that's what we tell people, but seriously, here's what's really going on.
That could be.
Here's an idea too, Ty. However you feel like you can tie it in and make it make sense, you can have abilities tied to equipment that is almost like it counters Aether, or is like, someone had used the term, is there anti-Aether? And basically these metals or these substances actually kind of have that property, either making you more resistant to Aether, or the ability to maybe break apart things that use Aether, something along those lines. I haven't fully fleshed it out, but it's definitely a way for you to tap into the special attributes. But your abilities might be a little more specific.
Okay.
I am already in love with this group. A mechanic, a psychic soldier, a crazy mage, an entertainer, and a knight. That sounds pretty cool.
Megan, what race are you thinking?
Human or elven? I'm not sure which.
Okay.
Look at the ears. She's elven.
Okay, elven. All right, that's fair.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Ty, what race?
I was thinking human.
Okay. And in this game, race means absolutely nothing anyway. But it might like if you take an attribute, special attribute, and it's like, oh, well, I have dark vision, you could explain it from your race easily. Doug, I believe you were a human?
Yeah, well, let me ask you, is there any race that's like kind of like looked down upon? Because I figured like this character, whatever that was, maybe she came from like a low society and was like, oh, I can kind of fit in with society by becoming an entertainer.
Well, the benefit of there being kobolds in the world is no one's lower than a kobold.
I hate kobolds. I've never liked. So I guess I'll go human.
Bill.
Dude, I wanted to be a kobold from the beginning.
Okay, nice. We have two kobolds. Kobold psychic soldier.
All right, so I have to ask this question: what version of kobold are we using here? Are we doing the scaly? I believe that I belong to dragon kind kobold from the current iteration. Are we going,
dog people with rat tails?
Yeah.
Or something different.
I'll throw it to you guys. Yeah, what do you want your kobolds to look like? Actually, the only people to get the weigh in on this one is Ted and Bill, because they're actually playing kobolds. They will define what they look like.
All right, so what's your opinion here, Bill?
I don't know. You rolled that persuasion check with Megan. I'm glad you didn't try that with me, because I want to crit be like, whatever you want, Ted. Honestly, I'm thinking that World of Warcraft looking kobold looks cool to me. But I actually want the candle on my helmet and everything. I'm joking about the candle.
All right, so do they? I'm not familiar with the World of Warcraft kobolds. Are they more dragony?
Yes,
No,
they actually look a lot
kobolds.
like the video game ones, like the Dungeons & Dragons ones.
Ooh,
The wings.
I just looked up a picture of one. They're weird looking.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Does everybody run
That's
this to
pretty
their
cool.
newest search engine?
Yeah. It only makes
Well,
sense.
World of Warcraft.
if you guys had two different ideas, there could be different kinds of kobolds too. Maybe the more mechanically minded or whatever Ted
Yeah, so
imagines.
These ones are far more rat-like. I definitely prefer the more dragony version.
Now, I will say I prefer something that so everybody can see. I do prefer something that isn't like if you I would be okay with this more so if it was modified. But my only thing is if we were ever to decide to do anything with this with Open Legend, they could never look like that.
Okay, well, let's throw up a picture of what they look like, because I don't really care about aesthetics too much.
Yeah. So, or maybe you guys can come up with an amalgamation of the 3rd edition Kobold and those guys. I like the way they look, though. They're pretty badass.
Ted, throw up a picture of what yours looks like. Or just straight out of the player's manual from 5e. Player's manual. Monsters manual.
I don't have a.
I'm still on 2nd edition, so I right away try to say
Monsters
Monsters Compendium.
I have a random fun fact. In folklore, the word kobold comes from cobalt, and they were said to haunt mines. They were kind of like brownies, but like haunting mines instead. They were like
That's why I went with the
shapeshifters.
WoW-looking one.
Yeah, they're probably a little more folklorish.
All right, so here's one of the old style, dragony looking kobolds.
They have a dog nose though. I noticed they added, so they're kind of throwback.
Yeah. So I actually think this is a 3rd edition picture, if memory serves correctly.
It is.
So that's kind of what I was thinking towards, but I'm not.
I'm cool with it, but with one caveat: it has to be able to grow facial hair because,
I have no problem with kobolds having facial hair.
Oh shit! Am I the only guy here without glasses? Doug, are you wearing glasses?
Yeah,
Son of a bitch!
yeah, you can take them off if you feel better.
You're out
I
of
don't really
uniform.
need them.
I
There
got
you
some
go.
window lens glasses I use for props, so
There you go. Now,
I'm in uniform.
now
Megan needs a fake beard.
yeah, Megan's the only one out of uniform now.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I can fix this. Give me just a second.
Yeah, but does that mean the rest of us got to get ears?
Only if you
I
play
think,
now.
there you go.
All right.
Oh,
Now we're getting silly.
All right, these things hurt my face.
So all right, I got all that. And so the other question is, how do you feel the races interact with each other? Do you feel like some cities would just consist of that race, or all the cities melting pots?
well, I would imagine that there's going to be a big difference. Like, there's probably some areas that are far more tolerant, and some areas that are like, all right, well, this is human central, and we don't really get along with anybody else. So I'm certain there's probably a completely elven city where everything is far more nature preserved than, oh, look at all this stone and whatever have you. So I imagine these are probably like the largest cities of the time, when they were literally ripped out of the ground by these engines, and whatever engineers that came in and destroyed the connection between these large plots of land and the surrounding continent, and the engines literally lifted them straight up into the sky.
All I know is I'm picturing one city that is basically just a great big giant junkyard. It's like Sanford and Son times a million, and it's pretty much nothing but kobolds.
The junkie on Homeworld.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you could have one that's completely kobold, one that's completely dwarven, one that's completely human, one that's completely elven, and that's only 4 of the 12. So there's still 8 other cities to really take into account, to have the melting pot and whatever have you. And that's not saying that other races couldn't be on those cities that are dominated by one race, but it could be that, like, as part of what they do, this is where you're home, this is where you're at.
So I feel a little bad for the gnomes because they've been completely glossed over.
Okay, well, then the gnomes could have a 5th city, and that still leaves 7.
Yeah.
That's just another topic
I'm glad you mentioned that the number of cities, Ted, because actually up till then I was thinking like, I don't like the idea of just like this is the human city, this is the elf city, but like you said, I mean, if there's 6 or 7 more of them,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And I also feel like these real elitist cities, like it's more important to like kind of for us to come up with some high concepts for their cultures more so than their race. The race is part of it, but like Ted was saying, well, the elves might be more naturey. But I actually, when I think of an elven city in this setting, I'm thinking, no, they're actually more. They might be ruled by a council of Ethermancers, and like that is one of the cities where it might not even be that people are unwelcome there of other races. They don't want to go there.
If it was ruled by a council of Ethermancers, they'd probably be pretty crazy. So they might get some kooky ideas from using all that ether.
Well, and that's just it. Like, and it just that city might just be considered really dangerous to hang out in. So people are
right.
Like, I don't think so.
I keep thinking of that, like you said, like the Cold War angle where it's like all these cities have all, they trade and everything, but there's all this stuff going on under the surface, and that sounds really.
And if we're doing something like that, then I think this is going to be a really huge social game where the idea of just having like an elf city, a human city, whatever. Wouldn't there also be suburbs within those cities, kind of like the European ghettos, where you have, like a lot of kobolds gather around in this human city? This way, people like, Ted and I could actually maybe mingle in with there, and, we have some persuasion there, and, things like that.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And also, too, like, actual physical conflict is greatly declined in the past decade because this thing happened and no one knows how it happened. The only thing they do know is one of the cities was destroyed and it was just gone for a while and reappeared, and now everything around it is just whacked and crazy and creepy, and it's
the end of the world. The end of the world has come. We must have a revival. Everybody needs to and right.
Ty's already into character. Okay, so we've got like Cold War espionage, thing. We've got a what else we have? We've got the Purge, kind of. We've got a Hunger Games society. Just mix all this together into a big pot. Make some cheeseburgers out of them.
Yes.
Delicious.
Like the idea that in the Elven City, there's like a district where all of the people that are too crazy to function as normal people just got shoved in there. So it's like total anarchy in this like 5-block area that's been coordinated off.
Maybe they send them to the surface.
Also possible.
So
maybe they just tell us that they put them in that district. We never go there.
Yeah, I actually like that idea of like we don't have to answer and that's the other thing. I like the idea of coming up with questions we don't answer. Because it could be either way, and as we play, we can figure that stuff out.
I'm curious, would we kind of be like employed by a secret patron that would send us on quests, or is that something we'll just discover while playing, or what?
Well, if you guys have decided to go along with being part of the Ethernazi,
I love that name,
as it's been dubbed, you could literally. You literally would have a patron in essence. So we'd have to figure out what their goal is, what their objective is. Ty might have joined as an infiltrator of, it just, or unless the organization is actually geared towards what his religion is, and that's bring him back.
I just had a thought. So if we're exiling people to like, does that mean the ground world's like Australia?
Oh my God.
Yes, and everything is trying to kill you.
Well, it is Australia then.
I'm going to take a walkabout on the surface.
So we are about at the hour mark. So next week, do you want to run one more of these session zeros and flesh things out a little bit more, or do you want to start planning the actual game?
I'm up for anything. I mean, this is fun. If we want to segue into playing a little bit, that's cool too.
I think I want to riff one more session like these and get some more ideas on paper and flesh things out a little bit, and then we can get into it.
All right.
And
Funny now.
Yes.
Thanks, chat.
Will there be a roll call before?
Yeah. We're about to leave, guys. We're about to sign off. A decent many amount of people have tuned in, so we're going to do the roll call, and I'm going to quick go over the idea for the world. Basically, it is a world that is in. If you had to give it ages, this is the third age. The first age was a fantasy world like Forgotten Realms or Lord of the Rings. The second age has been this arcana punk, steampunk world where there is no gods in the world anymore, no divine magic. Regular magic has kind of gone mad and hostile, but the people of this world try and use it anyway, and they channel it into this substance called Aether, and they use Aether to power everything, including the 13 cities that fly above the world. And they don't actually fly, they float above the world. And they're all kind of slightly at war with each other, Cold War style, until they actually destroy one of them. It vanishes for, we haven't actually decided on how long, but within the past decade, it is returned after basically having been destroyed and sunk. And around it is this area that has been known as the curtain, where the light is dim, the clouds are dark, and like a carpet of snakes, green and purple lightning just circulates around this place, and no one has gone there has returned the same. And sorry, getting distracted by the chat. And so we're going to start off with these guys being part of a secret organization. We'll have to decide whether it's the same thing. We created a sport that all the cities play with each other. That right now we're affectionately just referring to it as Etherball. I don't know if we'll keep that or move on to something else. And next week we'll probably do another. We're going to do another session like this, and then from there we'll start moving into the game itself. And thank you everyone for joining. Let's see where everyone's from. We got Washington, Oklahoma, Oregon, upstate New York, Central California, France. We haven't seen many Frances. Welcome. Utah, America, Albany, Oregon. We got Sweden. Sweden will always represent it. I think you guys are starting to just make it up to make me happy. Jacksonville, Florida, Texas, Argentina, Louisiana, Delaware. Nice. Texas. You got it, Delaware. You're really close to us. Look for the Nerdarchy Live event. Edmonton, Washington. So we are all over the place. The chat's been really lively. I'm going to leave the chat up, guys, and go through it afterwards. So if I didn't call out your ideas or mention them, I apologize, but it's a lot to keep track of. Like I said, I'm going to keep the chat up after I close out, so I can come back to it and take some notes from there. Like I said, I appreciate everyone hanging out. Thank you guys for being on. And with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.